Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Julia Niswender. Julia Niswender was born in 1989 in the small town of Monroe, which has a population of 20,000. She has a twin sister named Jennifer. The girls were raised by their grandparents while their mother was building her personal life. Kim had given birth to them at 15, claiming she was raped at 14 by a guy she barely knew. However, relatives say he was someone familiar and close to the family. Regardless, he avoided taking responsibility. After discovering her pregnancy, Kim decided she wasn't ready to be a mother and entrusted her daughters to her parents. The grandparents became their official guardians and raised them as their own children. When the children grew up, their mother remarried Jim, who worked in the cleaning business, and they had another daughter. By then, Jennifer was already attending school and living with her mother, while Julia spent a lot of time with her grandparents on her mother's side. In high school, things changed. According to her mother, Julia became defiant and uncontrollable, often arguing with her twin sister, Jennifer. Eventually, their mother grew tired of the constant fights between the daughters. Their house was small, with only 2 bedrooms and a living room, so she couldn't give the older daughters separate rooms. As a result, she decided to send Julia to live with her grandparents again. Julia was happy to return to her grandparents. She lived there for a while, and her grandparents indulged her and were very affectionate toward her. At that time, Julia became very concerned about her appearance and tried to lose weight. She followed strict diets, restricted herself in almost everything, and ate very little. Her grandma was worried about her, but Julia assured her that she was fine. At 19 years old, Julia needed to make her own life decisions. She enrolled at Eastern Michigan University in the journalism program and continued living with her grandmother. Julia dreamed of becoming a TV presenter. She became close to Jennifer and her mother, but did not want to return home. The 2 sisters became closer, sharing secrets, experiences, and events in their lives. Julia later moved to a room on the campus of a university in the small town of Salanta, Michigan. She was fortunate to get a room with a bathroom. Julia also got a job with her mother at Walmart. Her new place was a 45-minute drive from her mother's house. Her neighbors were girls she got along with well. On Thursday, December 6, 2012, with Christmas and the holidays approaching, Julia's neighbors left for the weekend to visit their families. Julia decided to visit her mother's family. They had already set up a Christmas tree and began decorating it and the house together. They all enjoyed hot chocolate and listened to Christmas songs, creating a festive atmosphere and having a wonderful time together. On Friday, December 7th, she visited her mother's workplace, and they went shopping for presents together. Julia and her mother then went home together, and an argument broke out that turned into a fight. The exact details of the incident remain unclear. Julia left the house in distress, drove to her grandmother's house, and expressed that she never wanted to return to that house again. Her grandmother comforted her, invited her to stay, and together they decorated the Christmas tree and the house. Julia's mother later visited her grandparents and reassured Julia that she had misunderstood the situation. Julia's grandmother listened to both sides and sensed that something was wrong. When her mother left, Julia stayed with her grandmother. The next day, December 8th, Julia went to work. She saw her mother there but did not speak to her. As they passed each other, Julia's mother told her that she loved her. After her shift, Julia went home. During her lunch break, she met her sister Jennifer at a coffee shop and mentioned her plans for the evening, saying that she was going to meet a guy after work, but she kept the details a secret. Julia was very private about her personal life, so it was not surprising that she kept this information from Jennifer. After meeting with Jennifer, Julia rushed to the car without putting on her coat, despite the cold weather. The last time Jennifer spoke to Julia was around 11 p.m., when Julia returned home from her date. Their conversation was brief. Julia simply said, "I'm home," before hanging up. Julia was very tired and needed to study for an exam the next day, December 9th. After working at Walmart, she went shopping and then returned home. That night, she ran into a neighbor who had just returned from visiting her family. The neighbor was getting ready to sleep at her boyfriend's house. Julia closed the bedroom door and was about to go to sleep. While the neighbor was getting ready, she heard the TV playing loudly in Julia's room. This made her feel strange because she had never seen Julia watching TV before, especially when it was time to go to bed. However, the neighbor was in a hurry to meet her boyfriend, so she didn't investigate further and left the house. On Monday morning, December 10th, 2012, the neighbor returned from her family visit. She quickly showered to get ready for school. While getting ready, she noticed that Julia's alarm clock kept ringing, but no one seemed to have turned it off. Knowing that Julia often struggled to wake up in the morning, the neighbor was not surprised. She knocked on Julia's door to try to wake her up, but received no response. After a while, she decided not to bother her anymore and went to school. That day, Julia did not go to class and also missed an important exam, which was unusual for her, as she had never been absent or late for an exam before. Julia missed her shift at her stepfather's cleaning company, where she had taken a part-time job to earn money before the holidays. Although she was scheduled to work, she did not show up. She also missed her shift at Walmart that evening, which raised concerns among her coworkers. The next day, December 11th, Julia missed her shift for the second time. Her coworkers grew increasingly concerned and tried to reach her by phone, but no one answered. An employee had Julia's mother's phone number and called her that evening to inform her that Julia had missed 2 shifts. Julia's mother, Kim, was at a cafe playing darts with Jennifer and other relatives at the time. She noted that their schedules often didn't align, and it was common for them to go 2 or 3 days without seeing or calling each other. When Kim learned that Julia was missing and not responding to calls, she panicked and tried to reach her daughter repeatedly, but all her calls went to voicemail. Concerned, Kim called Julia's friend Rachel and asked her to check on Julia. Rachel agreed and went to Julia's house around 9 p.m. Rachel found Julia's car parked in the driveway next to the house, but no one answered the door or the phone. Concerned, Rachel sought out a security guard for assistance. She asked the guard to open Julia's room to check, but he refused and instead called the police. The guard could not find a spare key to Julia's room. When the police arrived, they broke down the door and entered the apartment. Inside the bedroom, everything was in disarray. Furniture was scattered on the floor, and Julia's handbag was on the bed, making it look like a robbery had taken place. As the police continued their search of the apartment, they made a dreadful discovery. They found Julia's body face down in the bathtub. Her body was fully submerged, and her hands were behind her back with her feet together. There were signs of restraint on her wrists and ankles. A phone was also found underwater beneath her body. Julia's torn clothes were on the bathroom floor, and it was evident that the fabric had been cut with a knife. After examining her, the police concluded that her body had likely been in the water for 2 days and was in a state of advanced decomposition. The knife and rope used to tie up Julia were not found anywhere in the apartment. All of Julia's valuables, including her wallet with cash, laptop, and car keys, were still on the table, and the wrapped Christmas presents were untouched. The only items missing were the pillowcase and the keys to Julia's room, which led investigators to rule out the possibility of a robbery. Rachel learned the tragic news from the police and immediately informed Julia's mother about her daughter's death. Kim and Jennifer quickly got into their car and drove to Julia's apartment. Despite the police cordon, the mother and sister approached the building to find out what had happened. They tried to enter the room but were stopped by the police. The family demanded answers about Julia, but no one would give them any information. They were distraught and pressed the police for information. But the police only confirmed that Julia was dead. Police took Julia's family to the station, along with her neighbors, for questioning. Julia's neighbors stated that they generally got along with her, although they had had a conflict in the past. They had resolved their differences and had not encountered any problems since. The neighbors claimed they were not home when the murder occurred and provided a confirmed alibi, clearing them of any suspicion. Forensic experts examined the crime scene and found no signs of forced entry. All windows and doors were locked. Julia's room was on the first floor, leading police to speculate that she may have opened the door herself and that the attacker was likely someone she knew. At the crime scene, police discovered bloody rubber gloves, male biological fluids, and 3 DNA samples on the gloves. The evidence was analyzed, revealing that 1 DNA sample belonged to Julia, while the other 2 came from an unidentified male. One of the samples was too decomposed to be identifiable, and there was no record of the second male DNA sample in the police database. Notably, the biological fluids belonged to a man who had undergone a vasectomy, suggesting that he was not a father. This led police to conclude that the suspect was likely an older man rather than a younger one, as vasectomies are not typically performed at a young age. As a result, police focused their search on adult men who knew Julia. An autopsy revealed that Julia died from strangulation. She had been strangled before being thrown into the water. The potential suspect had turned up the volume on the television on the day of the crime to drown out any screams she may have made during the struggle. A toxicology report confirmed that there were no traces of alcohol or illegal drugs in her system. While the police continued their investigation, Julia's family decided to conduct their own inquiry to find out the truth. They posted leaflets and appealed to the public for help through the media and social networks, but these efforts did not aid their investigation. Police discovered that the girl had been dating a young man shortly before the murder. They checked Julia's phone, identified the man, and brought him in for questioning. However, he was soon released, as he had a solid alibi that cleared him of suspicion. Police found Julia's stepfather, Jim, suspicious, as he appeared unusually calm and did not seem to be grieving over Julia's death. He was familiar with her house and could have easily gained access to the apartment, as Julia may have let him in herself. People who knew him described him as strange, reclusive, and unsociable. Everyone kept their distance from Jim, especially after he had a vasectomy following the birth of his daughter with Kim. This made him the primary suspect in the investigation. When Julia's mother, Kim, and her sister Jennifer found out about the suspicions surrounding Jim, they strongly defended him, believing he was innocent. Kim argued that she had trouble sleeping at night and frequently got up to use the bathroom due to health issues. She insisted that she would have noticed if Jim had left the bed that night, but he stayed with her the entire time. Kim rejected all allegations against Jim, explaining that she had previously been a victim of violence. She stated that if she had sensed any danger from Jim, she would never have allowed him near her daughters. Julia's grandparents were very concerned about her and decided to speak up. They informed the police about a fight that occurred at Julia's parents' house a few days before the tragedy. Although Julia didn't provide details about the conflict, she did say she would never return to that house. This raised questions about whether she had discovered something troubling, or if there was another reason that led Jim to want to eliminate her. The grandparents noted that Kim and Jim's marriage was on the brink of divorce, as they frequently argued, and Kim had expressed that Jim might leave her. They hadn't shared a bedroom for a long time, making it difficult for Kim to know if Jim was home that night. This could explain Kim's intense protectiveness of her husband. She might have been trying to save their marriage or covering for him. In the early days following the incident, The police prevented Julia's mother and stepfather from entering her room, where the crime took place, as they were collecting evidence and information. Despite this, Kim and Jim attempted to gain access to the room and were eventually successful, although Kim later stated that she did not remember how they got in. The police were surprised because they had not granted permission for anyone to enter the room. Once inside, her parents immediately began unpacking and cleaning the room. First, they dumped a large bag of trash in the bathroom. After the cleanup, much of the original crime scene became untraceable. Additionally, Julia's car, which she had saved up to buy and was still paying for, was quickly sold by her parents on the grounds that they could no longer afford the loan. This raised significant suspicions. The FBI eventually became involved. Forensic experts concluded that Jim was the prime suspect. Julia's maternal grandfather, James, noticed that Jim had a very strict parenting style, often making Julia cry and cornering her. James suspected that Jim might be punishing his daughter harshly behind closed doors. It was also revealed that Jim had been a karate instructor and that the children had reported their mother for his brutal treatment. Jim had trained his daughter rigorously, helping her achieve a black belt in karate. The police asked Jim to provide a DNA sample, which he readily provided to clear his name. However, his DNA did not match that of the second man found on the glove. As time passed, the investigation stalled, and the case seemed to be forgotten by everyone except the grandparents. They regularly asked the police for updates and expressed their frustration at the lack of progress. Julia's grandparents still believed that the police should thoroughly investigate Jim, her stepfather. James suspected that Jim might have taken latex gloves from a cleaner at work to frame someone else while concealing his own involvement. However, this theory was never pursued further, leaving many unanswered questions, such as whose DNA was on the damaged glove. It raised the possibility that there could have been two criminals involved. They asked Jim to take a lie detector test, which he passed twice, but Julia's grandfather remained skeptical. He still believed that Jim was somehow involved in Julia's murder. James's persistent attempts to communicate with the police about the investigation led them to stop contacting him. This decision upset only Julia's mother. Living in Florida, James was unable to visit the police in person, which resulted in him losing access to important information and feeling powerless. His daughter Kim and granddaughters, Jennifer and Madison, wrote to James to inform him that he was no longer part of their family, which hurt him deeply. One of Julia's friends informed the police that Julia had reported harassment from her stepfather, who referred to Julia as his girlfriend, causing her fear. This suggested a possible sexual motive for the murder, prompting the police to seek a search warrant for Jim's home. During the search of his laptop, they discovered numerous explicit photos of minors. Jim was arrested due to these photos. At first, he claimed he was innocent, insisting that he did not know where the photos came from and that he was being framed. Later, he conceded that the photos might belong to him, but insisted he was unaware that the subjects were minors. He maintained his innocence and was found not guilty because the prosecution failed to prove that the photos depicted minors. Later, Julia's friend withdrew her accusations against her stepfather, although the police informed her that her previous statements had been recorded. James discovered that Kim and Jennifer had spoken to this friend and likely pressured her to change her testimony. Despite everything, Kim continues to support her husband and believes in his innocence. She thinks that her neighbor is responsible for her daughter's death due to a disagreement. However, this theory is not taken seriously because the neighbor has an alibi, and only male DNA was found at the crime scene. 3 years after Julia's murder, in 2015, Kim and Jim's attorney advised them not to provide a written statement because it could be used against them in court. James was even angrier when he heard this. He felt that if they had nothing to hide, they would not have hired an attorney or refused to give a written statement, as giving false testimony could have legal consequences. By insisting on giving a statement, they avoided potential liability. It was later discovered that the police had overlooked a crucial piece of evidence. It was the bathtub rug that might contain the criminal's DNA. This information emerged when a new police team took over the case. They reviewed all the documents and paid special attention to this rug. However, the police could not find it. Julia's mother allowed them to search through Julia's belongings, which she had taken from Julia's room and stored in a storage facility, but the rug was not among them. Its disappearance remains a mystery. Only Julia's family had access to the storage facility. Julia's grandfather suspected that her mother and stepfather had thrown the rug away while cleaning the bathroom, along with the trash. The stepfather's mother and Julia's twin sister both insist that there was no argument in their home a few days before Julia's murder. They describe the gathering as warm and friendly, with no disagreements. James is determined to seek justice for Julia. He has thoroughly researched DNA and discovered that technology has made significant advancements in the past decade, allowing for the analysis of damaged or weak DNA samples. He is puzzled by the police's disregard for his requests and suggestions, as they seem reluctant to pursue the case. Julia's mother, Kim, has divorced Jim, but they remain on good terms and maintain communication. She continues to support Jim's innocence and views him as a decent person. As a result, there have been no arrests in the case, and the perpetrator remains unpunished.